Thank you, Glamnetic, for sponsoring this video.
Hello, my darling dolls. My name is Mina, and today, because we're getting closer and closer to the holidays, or I guess we're like in the holiday season right now, I thought it'd be fun to talk about a children's toy that has deep, deep ties into the fashion industry. So deep that in 2019, it was the first non-living object that won a CDFA award. Today, we're going to be talking about Barbara Millicent Roberts. Stephen Kolb, president and CEO of the CFDA, said in a statement the year that she was awarded, "Barbie has had such a wide influence on American fashion and culture. Her story personally resonated with so many CFDA members that the board of directors decided to honor her with a special tribute." Barbie is one of the only toys that has continued to stay relevant through generations of kids, though Furby is making a very weird and surprising comeback. Barbie's also sparked a number of controversies, including her so-called materialistic attitude, her disproportionate figure, and the lack of racial diversity in her models. For this video, I want to talk about what transcended her from toy to cultural icon, the good
and the bad,
and why we still talk about Barbie today. But first, let's take a quick commercial break.
If you're stuck on stocking stuffers or just looking for last-minute gifts for friends and family, let me introduce y'all to Glamnetic. Glamnetic is a woman-founded company that makes magnetic lashes and liner. Yes, you heard me. I don't usually wear fake eyelashes. That's because in 2018, I had an incident occur where my eyelash glue exploded all over my wallet, and that was basically my 13th reason, so I just haven't worn lashes regularly ever since, which is why I'm super excited to try Glamnetic because they are glue-free. The lashes that I chose are Lucky, which is a medium cat eyelash, but they have 60 styles for every eye shape and length. Also, each lash set can be worn up to 60 times, which is a huge deal. I just prefer cat eyelashes because I feel like it goes better with my normal winged eyeliner look. First, we're going to apply the eyeliner like you would apply any kind of liquid eyeliner. Glamnetic does have these little tweezers. I personally prefer to put on my lashes by hand because that's just how I'm used to doing it. There are 6 micro magnets on every lash that will magnetize directly to your eyeliner. It's literally so easy. These lashes do stay on all day.
Each set also comes with anchors for the inner and outer corners. You put them on underneath your natural lashes so that they sandwich your natural lash with the Glamnetic lash for an extra secure hold.
So you can click the link in my description box to get your perfect last minute gift today.
Fashion dolls have existed long before Barbie. Max von Bowen found references to dolls across European courts starting from the 14th century. He writes, "At the time when the press was non-existent, long before the invention of such mechanical means of reproduction as the woodcut and copperplate, the doll was given the task of popularizing French fashions abroad. France was exporting fashion dolls to national fairs, and these dolls were even allowed to cross borders during times of war. But by the late 18th century, the fashion doll as they knew her virtually disappeared, as fashion journals were deemed to be better styling guides. That's not to say that France stopped making dolls altogether. There was a luxury doll industry in Paris that mainly targeted upper-class girls. It built off the innovations of Simone Auguste Bruyère, who at the 1844 industrial exhibition in the Champs-Élysées showed dolls that stood alone without stands and that wore removable clothing, which was a huge invention because prior to this, French dolls were actually sewn into their clothes. Removable clothing allowed girls to buy new outfits for their dolls and dress them however they'd like. Some French dolls of the 19th century include the Adelaide Harriet doll, the Bebe Jumeau, and the Jenny Bureau doll. But by 1900, it was actually German doll manufacturers that dominated the international market. German dolls were not really about fashion, they were more like character dolls or dolls that were molded to have a particular expression. The German doll was a response to global concern over the French doll's passion for fashion. For example, in the 1890s, the Russian Toy Congress passed a resolution protesting against the large, elegant French dolls that taught love of dress and suggested luxury. So it wasn't until Madame Beatrice Alexander arrived on the scene that the fashion doll came back to light in the form of Sissy in 1955. Alexander explains her desire to make Sissy fashionable by saying, "When I was 11 or 12, I realized that there were poor people and there were rich people, and I leaned towards the rich. I wanted to have a carriage and a hat with ostrich feathers." The difference between the French and American dolls were that French dolls targeted the upper class, whereas American dolls tried to appeal to the rising middle class in the post-war era. After Sissy came Ideal's Miss Revlon, who was the most widely distributed fashion doll in North America at the time, mostly because she was more reasonably priced than Sissy. Barbie came onto the scene in 1959 and was the creation of Ruth Handler. The reason that Barbie was so iconic at the time was because if you look at Sissy and Miss Revlon, they have very babyish faces. Barbie was the first adult-looking children's doll to make a splash in North America. At the time, baby dolls were actually the most popular toy dolls for girls, which author Sherry A. Innes criticizes, saying, "These dolls did not teach about the importance of travel and adventure. They taught about the importance of maternity and domesticity. They also conveyed the completely unrealistic message that babies are all a woman or a girl needs for complete bliss. Lessons like this can lead many girls to have babies while still teenagers, thinking that children are enough to fill someone's life with joy." So according to the book Barbie and Ruth, Ruth Handler got the idea for a new doll when she noticed that her daughter Barbara, who Barbie was named after, enjoyed playing with paper dolls, which were these like paper dolls that had changeable paper clothes. Ruth said in an interview years later, "I knew that if only we could take this play pattern and three-dimensionalize it, we would have something very special." And about the other fashion dolls of the time, Ruth said they were so ugly and clumsy and had child bodies for grown-up play situations. It just did not go. She got the inspiration she needed during a family vacation to Switzerland. Ruth and Barbara were transfixed by a window display of a toy shop that featured the German hard plastic doll Bild Lilly. The Bild Lilly dolls were dressed in gorgeous costumes and looked like actual adults with exaggerated hourglass body shapes. The reason why Bild Lilly looks like this is maybe because she started her life as a sex toy. More specifically, she was the star of a German adult comic strip created by Reinhard Buthian. She was characterized as a gold digger, exhibitionist, and a floozy.
Good for her.
So it's no surprise that when Reinhard decided to produce a doll based on this character in 1955, she was first sold in smoke shops and adult toy stores and was a popular bachelor party gift. However, young girls became drawn to Bild Lilly, and so manufacturers cashed in on this by also marketing her to children and producing Bild Lilly doll houses, clothes, and furniture separately. Unsurprisingly, when Mattel released the first Barbie doll that looks like this, some critics condemned Barbie for being sleazy and scary, and Sears refused to stock her. But nevertheless, Barbie persevered because when school let out for the summer, sales increased exponentially. Barbie was also originally advertised as a teenage fashion model, which is the justification for why she had so many clothes.
Of course, Barbie, the famous teenage fashion model doll by Mattel. May I arrange a showing of her wardrobe?
Oh, yeah, we'd love it.
Charlotte Johnson, the head designer for Barbie fashion, even had her team travel seasonally to Europe to watch Paris collections and design the first 21 ensembles inspired by Dior, Balenciaga, Givenchy, Schiaparelli, and etc. These early outfits were not mass-produced, and so careful attention was paid to the silk linings, the hand-sewn labels, the zippers, and the pearl chokers. Professional stylists also did Barbie's hair. But despite all these couture outfits, Handler also wanted to incorporate basic outfits that were representative of the modern teenager, like a tennis outfit and a football game outfit. While there is much that we can criticize about Barbie, and we will get there, it's important to note that she was groundbreaking for her time. Back when girls were supposed to play with baby dolls and rehearse their roles as future mothers, Barbie offered them liberation. She hung out with her friends, went shopping at the mall, never married her boyfriend Ken, became a single homeowner, and eventually even became the first female president of the United States in the 90s. I also think it's important to consider that in today's times, shopping is heavily tied to mass consumerism and environmental destruction. But it's also important to recognize that shopping is a radical part of women's history, starting in the Victorian era. In her book, Shopping for Pleasure, historian Erica Diane Rappaport writes, during a period in which a family's respectability and social position depended upon the idea that the middle-class wife and daughter remain apart from the market, politics, and public space, the female shopper was an especially disruptive figure. And shopping didn't always mean like actually buying something. A lot of women would use "I'm going shopping" as an excuse to roam around the city without a male escort or see their friends in a department store tea room.
Rightfully so.
Rappaport says about the criticism towards women shopping at the time, perhaps nothing was more revolting than the spectacle of a middle-class woman immersed in the filthy, fraudulent, and dangerous world of the urban marketplace. So yes, while I understand the dangers of overconsumption and yada 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 through today's lens, I think we can also question these early Barbie critics on whether they were against the shopping aspect because they didn't believe in overconsumption or because they just didn't want women to have fun. So what has led to Barbie's never-ending appeal? And I really mean it's never-ending because despite sales going down in the mid-2010s and children gravitating more towards virtual devices, Barbie's sales skyrocketed again last year thanks to the pandemic. Barbie's appeal comes down to two things. The first reason is that Barbie is constantly changing with the times so that she appears beautiful and glamorous to each new generation. During the 1960s, for instance, television sets put the public eye onto a strong family structure via family sitcoms and advertising. Barbie was thus marketed alongside new family and friends to align with this ideology. The Barbie books introduced George and Margaret, her parents, and Mattel added more dolls, a boyfriend named Ken, and a best friend named Midge, who represented the girl next door, serving as an equalizer in Barbie's high fashion world. Also in the 60s, with mod fashion at its height, Mattel released the Color Magic Barbie. Barbie was now dressed in a bright mod-style outfit and came with a solution created by Mattel chemists. A child could dab the solution onto the dress prints to change the fabric's color, or even dab it onto Barbie's hair for a fresh new do. And when more and more women were entering the workplace in the 80s, Day to Night Barbie was released. She came with modern office attire and an evening gown to change into. And her careers expanded from historically women-dominated fields like flight attendant and nurse to everything from SeaWorld trainer to astrophysicist. It wasn't until 2016 that Mattel finally added more inclusive models. They released 3 new body shape options, petite, tall, and curvy, 24 different hairstyles, 30 different hair colors, 22 eye colors, 14 face shapes, and 7 additional skin tones. They've been making more and more changes every year, and it's clearly been paying off because in the UK in 2019, the most popular Barbie fashionista dolls were the ones that came in wheelchairs.
She's just like you. Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Despite this, I don't want to give Barbie too much credit because I think they were very, very late on the diversity front. Barbie has been skinny, blonde, and white for so long that that's unfortunately the lasting image we have of her, no matter how many curvier or ethnically diverse Barbies come out. Mattel did attempt to introduce a sprinkle of racial diversity throughout the 20th century with the first Black Barbie in 1968, Black and Hispanic Barbies in 1980, and in 1988, they introduced dolls of color with actual names, which reversed an earlier decision in the 1970s to just call all the dolls Barbie. But compared to all the white Barbies on the shelves and plastered all over the merchandising, this is barely any effort at all. Then in 1991, after sales for Black Barbie increased 20%, Mattel introduced a new line of Black Barbie fashion dolls named Shawnee, Asha, and Nichelle. But the way that these dolls were marketed was honestly a little questionable. The word choice that they used to market Shawnee was very different from what they used to market Barbie. For instance, one of the descriptors for these black dolls was that they have an outrageous flair for exotic elegance. Whatever the fuck that means. Despite inclusion in the actual doll development, white blonde Barbie is still the poster girl for literally all other merchandise. Books, movies, lunchboxes, children's clothes. As Erica Rand writes in Barbie's Queer Accessories, if the diversity displayed on the toy shelves suggests that any kind of girl can be Barbie, the diversity displayed in textual products suggests something quite different. Any kind of girl can be Barbie's friend. But regardless of the slow progress they're making to appease marginalized groups, on the superficial side, Barbie is constantly adapting to new fashion trends and new interests to reflect the new generation, which is why I think she's still a household name. She always appeases the mainstream. Barbie's feminism is never controversial. She's a feminist in the sense that she supports herself and that she cares about world peace and the environment, but not feminist enough to have a transparent stance on anti-imperialism or even reproductive rights. And Mattel also doesn't want us to think about how Barbie is disproportionately wealthy, what with being able to afford a car, her own house, and lots of luxury clothes. They want to put the focus on how she can do anything. But for all we know, she could be paying only about $750 in federal income tax. Another reason why Barbie is so popular is because she upholds Ruth's core value, that Barbie means something different and personal to everyone. Barbie is a blank slate that children can project their fantasies onto. In her 1994 autobiography, Ruth Handler wrote, "My whole philosophy of Barbie was that through the doll, the little girl could be anything she wanted to be. Barbie always represented the fact that a woman had choices." This wasn't achieved to an extent, but Mattel did end up releasing a little bit of Barbie backstory against Ruth's original wishes, mainly because thousands and thousands of children wrote letters wondering who Barbie was, asking how she got started as a model, asking her where she lived. Another big reason is that financial advisors wanted to make more Barbie licensed products, including books, and to introduce other dolls into the Barbie universe. I don't know how many kids ended up following the Barbie canon to a T, but I know for my own Barbie play, even though I was aware of the Barbie cinematic universe, Princess and the Pauper was the best one. Sorry. I had more fun renaming them and inventing new storylines for them. As Amy Lefkow wrote in her article for the New York Times in 1994, Miss Quinlan says that Barbie gives little girls the message that the only thing that's important is being tall and thin and having a big chest. Barbie gave us no messages. It was we who gave Barbie meaning. Lefkow also argues that Barbie helped teach her compassion. She talks about how she owned the Barbies with the bendable knee joints, and when the bendable knee joint gave out, she wouldn't just toss her Barbies away, she would invent little makeshift wheelchairs for them. Jennifer Dawn Whitney, in her thesis Playing with Barbie, adds that through playing with Barbie, children can build their emotional capacities, which ends up helping them deal with real-life problems in the future. For another example of this, the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles actually used Barbie in therapy with children who had to undergo amputations. After Barbie's arm or leg is removed, she's fitted with a prosthesis, and then this is gifted to the child. Ellen Zaman, director of patient family services at the hospital, said, "It helps the children understand what will happen to them." However, Barbie was not the first toy to facilitate this kind of imaginative play. In Sugar and Spite, The Politics of Doll Play in 19th Century America, Miriam Formanek-Brunel talks about how even though parents tried to get dolls to help girls learn specific social rituals, like a maternal devotion and appropriate female submissiveness, children would still play the way they wanted to. For example, adults would encourage these doll funeral rituals to teach girls the important aspect of female nurturing. However, memoirs of the time exposed that often little girls would act out aggressive feelings and hostile fantasies, sometimes changing the emphasis from cathartic funerals to
ritualized executions.
But back to Barbie. We remember Barbie above all these other Victorian dolls, mainly because of Mattel's successful marketing. Mattel blatantly encourages this type of individualized fantasy play and emphasizes how Barbie is this aspirational figure. Hence the "we girls can do anything." Except for math, apparently.
Most of what the new Teen Talk Barbie says is pretty harmless, considering the source, but some of the dolls are programmed to say, and I quote, "Math class is tough." That has drawn fire from those who think Barbie's remark reinforces a stereotype about girls and math.
Consequently, people have strong reactions to this claim. Sometimes these reactions are positive and sometimes they're negative, but the point is that they have a reaction. Rand even found that many adults use Barbie over any other toy to analyze their childhood selves. For example, author Lisa Jones wrote an essay about Barbie in her collection Bulletproof Diva. She describes first how she cut off all the hair on her Barbie dolls and dressed them in African prints because at the time there weren't many black Barbie options. But she goes on to say that after an incident at school where she realized that all the girls looked like Barbie and none of them looked like her, she beheaded her Barbie dolls and disfigured them. Lisa says that as a Black American woman who grew up post-1950s, she was culturally inscribed to have some sort of relationship with Barbie. But for her, Barbie's cultural dominance and her "we girls can do anything" slogan made her feel othered. Because of how pervasive Barbie is in our culture, she unfortunately becomes a marker of whether or not we fit in with the other girls or the other boys, if in the reverse case you were a boy who liked Barbie when all the other boys played with G.I. Joe. There's been a number of studies published about how experiences in childhood shape our adulthoods. One study published in Child Development found that the type of emotional support a child receives during the first 3.5 years of their life has an effect on education, social life, and romantic relationships 20 to 30 years later. So it's no surprise that a toy we grew up with or grew adjacent to has such an effect on us and why we revisit her when we reflect on our own personal journeys. But while it may be doom and gloom for most of us who grew up with the white, skinny, blonde femme Barbie that was plastered literally over all forms of media, it is kind of nice to think about how this new generation of kids will actually grow up with Barbies that look like them. But let it be known that Claire Bates measured the curvy Barbie's proportions and wrote for BBC that curvy Barbie is still thinner than the average British woman aged 16 to 24, and her dress size would be equivalent to about a US size 6. So then again, there are still ways to go. Okay, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please let me know in the comments what your experiences growing up with Barbie were, or if you didn't grow up with Barbie, what toy you were drawn to instead. Personally, I was a bigger fan of Bratz, like all the other hot girls. Just kidding. I just thought that snapping off the ankles was a better design decision for changing shoes because literally my number one problem with Barbie is that her shoes would always fall off her little dainty little feet. But now that I'm older and I have more knowledge of the fashion industry, I can at least appreciate Barbie's designer collaborations, starting with the Oscar de la Renta Barbie in 1998, and then all the fantastical Bob Mackie ones. I'm not much of a collector because I live in an apartment with not that much space, and also I think dolls are a little scary as an adult, but I can see why people are drawn to these figures. Anyways, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.